afternoon, лужники.
Класс, можно еще раз? Добрый день, лужники!
Good afternoon, лужники.
Кайф. Ребят, ну давайте, это все
Guys,
выступление на этой сцене.
okay, this is my third presentation on that stage. And the first two were about discussions when we talked a lot about the fact that we have to think about the result, that we have to understand how to work with the top management. And now, let me try in my presentation to accumulate all these things in terms of how it would be seen with the eyes of the people who are directly involved in the questions of cybersecurity, how it may help you to arrange your working processes, for instance. What takeaways I expect? This is very unlikely that I'm going to tell you something new. Most likely you already heard that, got that, seen that, or at least thought about that. I want to systematize many things for you, and even if I do not reinvent the wheel, probably you will have a feeling that we got systematized your knowledge. If anyone thought that I would be speaking about infrastructure of post-Russia PLC, where what cybersecurity systems arranged, then probably you were of poor ideas about the CISO. So let's proceed from the fact that we will try to systematize your knowledge to understand what an effective cybersecurity is about and why we need that. The most scary thing about cybersecurity, as we have discussed today, is that it's very difficult to measure it. The money that we have saved up doesn't equal the money that company earned, so that's why. Explaining to the top management what they would get from the security system installed, cybersecurity system installed, very difficult. Very often we do some projects. We would implement something, deploy something, deploy CM, and would have a CO, SLC connected, and we're not happy. And everyone involved in that process feels being cheated. Why this happens? Because we all have different expectations. They all thought that at the end of the day it won't be so fast or so nice, and we cannot synchronize the reality and the expectations. Moreover, we have to bear in mind the regulators who also would see the result of they work differently. They expect compliance. They believe that the minimum range of requirements are met and everything would be good with the customer. At the same time, the cybersecurity market were not limited with integrators. We are speaking about the vendors, the distributors, the companies that implementing all these things also expected that after everything is implemented, everything would be good. And Aidar, speaking at that stage, previously said that he's an owner of a big company, one of the leaders of the industry, in IT industry, thought that everything is okay with cybersecurity, but when he supported his colleagues to join Bug Bounty platform, doing that tomorrow, he was told that not the internal backstage where cybersecurity officers are prepared for that, or anyone from IT. And it took about 9 months in order to allow the company that is permanently involved in cybersecurity to join Bug Bounty platform. So that's a good indicator. And always we can speak about how having big budget we can provide ourselves with interesting solutions that would create an image of being fully protected, but very often the customer doesn't understand what he wants to see end of the day. For instance, he would say, I need that button, and everything would be just great. And very often the customer would not understand how. And then we run into a very uninteresting problem, unfortunately. There are quite few people who are dealing with cybersecurity in Russia, both in the regulator, in customer, and in the market. And then we are caught with a classical trap. When the cybersecurity market doesn't proceed from the request of the customer, not from their demands, not from what the business wants to see end of the day, but it depends on how professional the sale and pre-sale of some vendor worked, explaining to some specific customer what would happen. For instance, 32 screens of the next generation. We have 18 CM, but only 2 antiviral systems. And similarly, there have to be about many more such antiviral products. Means that the cybersecurity market has been shaped by the sales personnel. Is it good or bad? This is the reality, but how we provide for the desired result, because the customer wants everything to be all right. And we get stuck in a classical project cycle. The customer has problem with a shortage of money and time and shortage of personnel, whereas the market has a limited number of solutions, and not always it wants to guarantee the result. Let's be frank. Who heard a paradigm when something would happen in infrastructure and the following analysis would happen? Something happened to customer, a customer would call integrator and would say, "Integrator, something happened to me." And he'll say that this is because the product doesn't work appropriately. And the customer would call the vendor and would say, "What is going on?" And the vendor would say, "This is the integrator that didn't tune the system the right way. We engineers are not using that properly." The customer would call the integrator and would say, "Explain it to me." And it would say, "You see, when designing the vendor did something awfully wrong." And this is a vicious circle when the customer is the one where the buck stops and he doesn't even know who to accuse. Have you ever seen anything like that? Raise your hands. That's a problem. That's a real problem. And we all understand it. And we all want everything to be all right. But you know what the restriction is? No one wants to pay for that. Because, again, the customer is short of money. And despite the fact that the customer wants to set everything straight, it is not ready to pay as much as the market demands. Don't forget also that we, as cybersecurity officers, have a conventional case. I had a teacher of biology who used to say that my subject is most important. Russian mathematics is no good, but biology is most good. Most important sometimes that these my cybersecurity officers remind me of her. They would tell me that cybersecurity is most important, otherwise the hackers would ruin the infrastructure. Now there are more attacks, and the system is nearly collapsing. And if you don't buy NGFL, then it would ruin. And actually, you install that, and patchcore probably was not even fit very well with that, and everything works. Is it a paradox? No. Then probably we don't need cybersecurity or information security. And this is the way business departments start discussing. And they would say, "Guys, we have not been hacked for years. Why are you telling us that story? Why are you crying havoc? We the hackers are, so half of the market has been hacked, but we have not. So what's the problem?" And the business is not far from the reality. Were we lucky enough? If talking to the business, you cannot explain why this or that department needs cybersecurity, then probably you are not a very good cybersecurity officer in terms of how you communicate with the departments in charge. then business always wants everything to happen overnight. And they would come to you and would say, guys, we need access this and there. And open to us access here and there, and we do not need cybersecurity tool. And Google tables, for instance, are very convenient, and we're going to publish all the personal data there. Everyone does that. And if you fail to explain to your colleagues that this is the wrong way to think, that doesn't comply with the Russian legislation, then probably they would misunderstand you. And most importantly, when you are going to explain that to them, they would believe that you are just a boring person who is limiting the business. Besides, there is a competition for resources. Whether we want it or not, information security costs money, and sometimes even the producers, manufacturers themselves cannot explain why so much. And when we say that you want to buy a new toy for X something rubles, and the business would say, if you have given that million rubles to us, we would earn much more money, and probably even no incident would happen within that period of time. Then it means that you would be a loser. And this is your result. If you fail to explain that to business, it becomes something very abstract, something unneeded. You lost the battle for resources. You have no money, and your explanations would be in vain. I love very much our IT colleagues. Without them, IT security would not be needed, because once there are no IT technologies, there is no cybersecurity. Seemingly, but very often we run into the situation that IT technologists not only counter, but they always do not understand why cybersecurity is of need for them. My position is very simple. If you started information security project without an agreement from IT technologists, you are doomed to a failure. IT technologists, these are the guys who are helping you, who we're making friends with, and who are the backbone of our development. But at the same time, there is one disclaimer. We have to understand that IT guys, just like business, have to get explained why they need cyber security or information security. IT guys, just like any other person, needs an explanation. Usually, this would be about psychology and business. If you learn to explain to people why this very person needs information security, you will teach them information security, you would engage them in the process, and you would ensure that they work along with you, not against you. The second factor, just like with business, information security is very resource-consuming, whether throughput, capacity, servers, channels, operational systems, etc. And then you are starting competing. And I remember an IT guy had a discussion with the cybersecurity officer. An IT guy said that I have the standby copying cycle, and cybersecurity officer said, actually, I cannot do a pilot in a virtual memory, so that's an awful situation. So the situations are totally different, but they have to know to work with that. Why? This is the key question we have to learn how to answer, first of all. This is a business case, legacy systems. Someone probably started from information security or in IT technologies in the year 2000 and would build those systems with their own hands, but it turned out that we have actually we see only some most recent systems, and this is just like an octopus, and you see only the hands of it. Are you sure that you don't have legacy subsystems? or some hardcore things or information system that you do not even know was accessed by anyone. 99% you have such a legacy system. And I have another, my beloved PM. And if you do a project without considering the rules of its management, you are doomed to a failure. Only if you agree with IT guys, then you cannot do without an adequate communication. And you may build everything, but it doesn't work. So this is a kind of paradox. When every business or department did its job, but all in all, the project doesn't take off the ground. The same is true of the project management. And there is another key idea that you have to bear in mind all the time. That answer to the question why you need the information security should be possessed not only by you, everyone else has to know that. I think that this is in your job description, and you're paid for that, but you have to explain that to all your allies who are standing up for this security, information security and cybersecurity. If you don't do that, if you don't explain that to others, then the result would be totally unexpected. Can you imagine? You worked all together for a year's time. You convinced IT, and even top management agreed that they need that. They understand what information security officer needs, and so you agreed on that. And an ideal picture has cropped out that it has a digital fortress. They understand how they are going to tell their children how everything is great in their job, that at another gathering, playing some game would boast that everything is protected and they are just great people. But what is in the heads of the market? And the market says, okay, we spent money, we did a job expected from us. And so the terms of reference was made by the customer, not by the market. And the market says that actually it is standing up for the result. So business measures the security in money. And again, everyone does what was instructed, and there is no result. But what we do about that? Can you imagine what I started my presentation with, that everything is pushing the buck, passing the buck? Can you imagine an ideal world where the vendor is responsible for the work of its product? When the vendor would come to the customer and would say, we know for sure how our product works. We, for your system, will do necessary research, designing, and will tell how our product should ensure your information security. Then it would ensure the deployment of that product. And then, all of a sudden, not only it would say, I have signed the Acceptance Act and that's it, but we'll have to undergo a real test, whether its product or set of products ensure the result expected, the digital fortress that was imagined by the customer. This is just about spending money. Once the market realizes that it may not get money for the poor result, then the market starts hedging and the customers are paying more. In the morning, we discussed in a while what may happen and how the testing has to be done and how to assess the results of information security. Should it be a pin test or some certified or approved methodology of testing where it derives from practice? I will express my own point of view. I think that just hacking the front page of the website is not enough in order to assess the costs incurred by implementing the cybersecurity system by the company. If just a domain was hacked and then would be used in order to tell everyone that the front page was hacked, probably this is not the result that the customer would like to see. And while, as long as you have not agreed, as long as you have not enshrined in the agreement the responsibility of the vendor, you will again play your own game and the vendor would play its own game, and most likely you would lose. When it became obvious and when we all agreed, so let's have a look at what should be under the bonnet of that effective cybersecurity system, if we understand what result we want to achieve. That's an image of the result, which would be the same for all the stakeholders, and it would determine the ways you achieve it. Let me elaborate on that but a bit later, but in a nutshell, we have to understand what the cybersecurity is all about. If you dealt with PCI-SS standard 27001, that's about the same. So to determine the limits of the project, if you say that I want that the whole company feels well, then probably it would be very much costly. And as Boy Siemens has said, if you focus on what is really important for the company, what positive calls as intolerable events or intolerable risks, what may become a result, most likely it would cost not so much, not always, but there is an opportunity that it may cost less. Then stack technologies. We can open any methodology of stack, and it describes very well what set of technologies has to be used in order to be compliant with the stack of Russia. So that's great. And if you can use that set of protective measures to stand up in the trial, then you are great. If your organization doesn't work like that, if not all the solutions are appropriate, if you say that you are not compliant with the stack requirements and you want to build something new, then probably you will need a total different set of technologies. But the most important answer is the one to the question of why. If you want just to buy CM and if you believe that after that you will not miss any cybersecurity events, then probably this is not the result that we would expect from a digital fortress. The way you deploy that, we can discuss a lot, and this is what we're doing as to how we may ensure the information security we're speaking about. We can take a conventional way. We may say that we will make a terms of reference. We'll do that through the system and comply with the regulation on purchases.
After that, we'll complete a project to ensure information security. We will review it, accept it. Then, within this project, we will prepare procurement documentation, complete the procurement, and deploy the information system and security system across our infrastructure and get some result. If you are covered by your financing, budget financing cycle and comply with the legislation, most likely it will take you a couple of years to do all such things. And you will end up with one subsystem that may yield some result. Will it be efficient? Maybe. Or what kind of result will be achieved and how you will be able to test it? It's an open question. However, if it takes, say, 28 information security subsystems, or 30, or 50, how many abbreviations for information security systems are crossing your mind? I tried to map them, and I had about 40 projects for 3 years. Cool. Possibly. will become effective in protecting data in I don't know how much time. Well, there are companies that may have ignored information security for decades, and now they come and ask themselves, why does nothing work? Oh, we have been cracked. And they start saying, well, come up with our security system fast. But for some reason, it can be built fast. I'll give you a classical project management example. You know that it takes 9 months to bear a child, but you can't make it in 1 month with 9 women. The same story here. Nevertheless, relying on the approach based on cutting off the lowest hanging fruits and gradually building your information security systems around it, maybe to what extent it complies with the procurement regulations. I think you will need a lot of talents to justify it at all your committees, let alone complying with the legislation. And now I am getting down to the most discussed question: how to prove that all those 40 or 50 InfoSec systems deployed on your infrastructure do work, except for just warming the air. How can you prove to your top managers that your digital fortress exists? What's the output? Bug bounty or pen test? Well, of course, well, the answers vary from one individual to another, and the more I speak to people, the more ways to justify I see. All right, let's dig deeper. Applications, how can they be defined? Let's assume you're a small corporation, and you have projects that are subject to different information security requirements, including those stipulated in the Russian information security legislation. Cool. Don't forget about the regulations. Don't forget that they do exist. You can build a cybersecurity system pretty effective and efficient based on open source, interacting with everything and anything in the web. However, when the regulator comes, they will easily prove that it's also necessary to comply with the legislation, in addition to providing cybersecurity. And this is one of the risks that you should keep in mind. Another factor we have been discussing today, that if you bring together two experts, they will be able to confirm meeting the requirements. Internationally, those requirements are shaped out by the banking sphere, other industries that may require individual things. We can consider risk protection. You have determined your inadmissible events. All right, now you are getting down to setting requirements. Development scenarios are also cool, but it's still unclear how to identify inadmissible events that are pretty blurred. How can you protect your corporation against strategic risks? There are methodology units defining risks, identifying the influence of the InfoSec department. All those inadmissible events in combination with corporate ethics, history, and requirements are a factor in the way you deal with the things that scare your decision makers. Have you ever seen an inadmissible event that are not just defined by the business, not the CEO, not the board, who may have been explained well what they should be afraid of. Usually, those guys are afraid of having their careers ruined or their reputation. However, failing to use it and failing to explain the importance of information security will be incorrect. Now, protecting your systems against the capabilities of your customer. When the first question you get is, how much money do you have? Well, these guys come, they see that you have money, they don't have money enough to pay for the CM. We can tell them our story. Look, guys, stock is an important thing, and then the same mantra. Can an InfoSec system be formed in this way? Of course, but you need to understand what result you expect, your expectations, your technology stack. I'm not going to read all this stuff. However, if you say that you can build an information security system for major infrastructure based on one vendor's product, I'll shake your hand, of course, but I will ask you to provide me with practical analysis reports to prove it. And if you manage to prove it, I'll give you a huge hug. Come over, we'll discuss it. I'll ask you how you achieve that. Just don't forget about one thing. Once your license has expired, the vendor will come and say, my friend, do you understand? The situation is really difficult, and the programmer's labor is expensive. That's why next year your license will be 3 times more expensive, and the system is already in place. And this is important to keep in mind. Well, one can understand perfectly well what should be cut off, extinguishing the fire, although it will be really expensive. For classical implementation, it will be really expensive. So, if it's not only about introducing information protection subsystems, the truth will be somewhere in the middle, and you will be extinguishing your fires in an iterative and expedite manner. Efficient information security is always about answering the why question. Why do you need an effective and efficient information security system? If you want to say, I built a company that can be cracked by anyone, first of all, you have built such a company, and secondly, to crack it may take between 15 and 17 minutes. And thirdly, it's unlikely that anyone will be declaring such things publicly. But if you're a business underpinned by methodology and all those certificates, I might brag around that I have passed certification testing through completing information and cybersecurity testing. Therefore, my product should be present on the market. Buy them, and you will be okay. Like the results of the business don't depend on the quality of their information security subsystem. In this case, we again have to address the why question. If based on your methodology, you can explain to the business, dear business, like Aidar mentioned, how much will it cost to crack us? You will come to the general director and say, it will cost 1 million rubles to crack us. Do you know what the answer will be? How much was it before? And you will say, Previously it was X minus 10%. Will it be a result? I'm not sure. No question, no answer. However, any way to prove that you may use must address this why question. If you don't understand it, if you can't explain to your 3-year-old why you're doing something, it may be worthwhile thinking if it's worthwhile continuing doing this. For the market people, it's a scary question, the why question. When we need guarantees, our price tag skyrockets. We want to buy an out-of-the-box solution, pay money, the vendor gets the money, the customer gets the solution, and starting from this point, the vendor is getting an unlimited source of income. So the question is why? Why do you need those? Why don't you buy our licenses and everything will be okay? And you will hit your targets. What are the customer's risks? Engaging in a project in which you have to explain why to your stakeholders entails your personal risks. You set high requirements to your suppliers, and your project budget will skyrocket because all those who are not able to deliver will just not come. But anyway, we want to try. We're not just those who want to do the job well. In any situation, we will continue trying, doing our best to come up with an effective and efficient information security system. The main question we should address in doing so is what kind of result we will yield to our business. And after a dozen years, we will be bragging it in our memoirs. Colleagues, come up with effective and efficient information security. Well, I have 3 minutes left to address your questions. Thank you.
Если продавцы двигают ИБ-отрасль, то, может быть, ЦИСа переиспользует этот же
подход. If vendors promote information security, why don't we pursue the same approach? There is a number of vendors who shall dealing with information security. And we always encounter some opposition. If you make your vendor to work more and cover broader market, your product becomes more expensive. However, if your vendor uses it as an advantage and can resell it to another customer, it's true advantage. And then you can brag. Or if they can brag, I complete certain projects here and there, you can replicate it, and this will be your competitive edge. You need to be able to communicate with the marketing people, explaining to them how to promote their products and what it can give to the market. So please be in touch with the vendors. Interact at the technology level. Because like many other major operations, vendors have their salesperson, they also have their developers. And it's not always that they interact. After my presentation, I was approached by Alexander, who said, Roman, thank you very much. Now I understand that we, technology people, are not left alone. It's not only us who experience such problems. They exist everywhere. A good person, a good security expert is the one who knows how to communicate with people and explain things to them. Who of the vendors do you have an agreement with where the vendor is made responsible for the efficiency of their products? If I engage in giving you a list of such vendors, if you expect this from me, of course I'm not going to do so. However, if you come to any major Russian vendor and ask, guys, how are things with your mail? they will dry their tears and say, it's okay. That's why we work with many people. Have you ever stipulated such vendor responsibility in a contract? And how big was the increase of the contract amount? Well, the worst thing is that such a dialogue between me and the vendor, well, if the product fails to work out, and such an uncertainty read in the eyes of the vendor makes customers really nervous. Teach your salesperson to hide the things that scare them, their fear. Well, if you have more questions, feel free to contact me, and thank you very much for your attention.
Заполнить тему кризиса базы данных